All right, let's talk poker, but not just about the cards in your hand. Today, we're getting into the real game, the one happening in your opponent's minds. We are going to open up the pro's playbook on reading body language. The goal? To turn you from someone who just plays their cards into someone who plays the entire table.
So, here's what's on deck. First, we'll talk about why this is the pro's secret weapon. Then, we'll dive right into decoding the tells you need to be looking for. After that, we'll cover how to actually train your eye to see them, how to spot the advanced stuff, the fake-outs, and finally, how to pull it all together for a real, tangible edge. So let's jump right in.
Okay, first things first, the pro's secret weapon. You know, poker isn't really just a game of cards, is it? It's a game of psychology. And getting a handle on that side of things, well, that's what separates the good players from the ones who seem to know what you're holding.
So what is that real difference? It's all about gathering the information that isn't on the cards. Think about it. Great players, they're not just odds calculators. They're people readers. They get that everyone at the table, and I mean everyone, is giving off these little signals, whether they realize it or not.
And when you learn how to harness this skill, it gives you a massive edge. Suddenly, you're the one spotting bluffs with way more confidence. You gain that psychological high ground because you can feel the emotional temperature of the table. And all of that, it just leads to making better, smarter decisions and lets you absolutely capitalize in those huge, high-pressure moments. You know, the ones that make or break a tournament.
All right, let's get to the good stuff, the core of the playbook, decoding those opponent tells. This is where we get really practical and break down exactly what physical cues you should be looking for when you're sitting at the table.
Let's break this down by where you're looking. First, the face. Imagine this. Your opponent shoves a huge stack of chips in. You look over, and they've got this smile, but it's kind of tight. It looks forced. Bingo. That could be your sign they're bluffing. Now, what about the eyes? If someone's suddenly avoiding eye contact right after the flop, that often screams weakness or hesitation. Then you've got to watch their hands. If they're stacking their chips confidently, neatly, that often means a strong hand. But on the flip side, those fidgety, shaky hands, that's a classic sign of raw nervousness. And don't forget posture. Leaning forward, that's interest, that's aggression. But if they're sitting back with their arms crossed, that can be a really defensive, uncertain pose.
But, and this is maybe the most crucial point of the entire explainer, you have to remember this. A single cue by itself means almost nothing. Seriously. A player could just be stretching, or maybe they're just a fidgety person by nature. The real key, the secret sauce, is looking for consistent patterns over many, many hands. That's where you find the gold. That's the reliable info.
So you're probably asking, okay, great, but how do I actually get good at spotting these patterns? Well, the good news is it's a skill. And like any skill, you can train it. So let's talk about how you can sharpen that poker eye and turn all this knowledge into a real weapon.
Here's a simple 4-step plan you can start using tonight. Step 1, observe baselines. Just pick one opponent and watch them for a while. What do they do when they're relaxed, when they're not in a big hand? That's their baseline. Step 2, practice when the stakes are low. Jump into some low-risk games where you can just focus on watching people without the pressure of losing your shirt. Step 3, take notes. I'm serious. When you see what you think is a tell, jot it down. What was it and what was the situation? And finally, step 4, review your sessions. Look back at your notes after you're done playing. This is how you start connecting the dots and really dialing in your accuracy.
And look, don't think for a second this is just some kind of cheap party trick. It's not. This is a core part of what the pros do. I mean, they're grinding out hand analysis, they're studying strategy, and right alongside that, they are actively practicing reading their opponents. It's a fundamental, legitimate skill of the game.
Okay, let's level up. We're moving into some more advanced plays now. Because here's the thing. Once you get good at spotting tells, you have to realize that other experienced players, they know you're watching. And you better believe they're going to try and use that against you.
And that brings us to something called a false tell. What is that? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like, a deliberately faked gesture. An opponent might act all shaky and nervous to try and convince you that their monster hand is actually a bluff. Or maybe they'll act super confident to scare you off a pot when they're holding nothing. It is a pure, deliberate act of deception.
So the big question is, how on earth do you spot the difference? And the answer, it comes right back to what we said before, patterns. A reliable tell is part of a consistent behavior you've seen from that player over and over. A false tell, it's usually a one-off thing. It might seem a little too exaggerated, a little too on the nose, or just, well, out of character for that player. So remember, trust the long-term pattern, not the short-term performance.
And please, burn this into your brain because this might be the most important strategic point of all. Reading body language is an incredibly powerful tool, but it is not a crystal ball. It should always, and I mean always, just be one more piece of the puzzle. It complements your core poker strategy. Use what you see to add another layer of info to your decisions about odds and betting patterns, but never ever let a supposed tell override solid fundamental poker.
All right, let's wrap this up and bring it all together. We've talked about why this stuff matters, what you should be looking for, how to practice it, and even how to defend against the tricky stuff. So let's do a quick summary of how all this combines to give you that much-needed edge at the table.
So here it is, your final playbook summary. Point 1. Great players read opponents, not just their cards. Point 2. You're always looking for patterns in the face, the eyes, the hands, and the posture. Point 3. You have to practice this deliberately, observe, take notes, and review. Point 4. Always be on the lookout for those false tells and always trust the pattern over the one-time gesture. And finally, the big one. Combine all of these reads with solid fundamental poker strategy. That's the winning formula.
So I'll leave you with this one thought to take to your next game. You've got the tools now. You have the pros playbook in your head. You know what to look for. So the next time you sit down at that table, what story are your opponents going to be telling you? And more importantly, will you be ready to listen?
Start a live chat now to join one of our clubs or ask us any questions. Message at bluffingmonkeys24_7 on Telegram or visit bluffingmonkeys.com and start a live chat.